People pass by the historic Wolf Building every day as they drive along Yelm Avenue in downtown Yelm. There's no grand marquee, but the posters hanging in the windows give people a glimpse into the array of events taking place inside. The Wolf Building is the home of the Triad Theater, the brainchild of Calamity Jayne. Jayne sat down with the Nisqually Valley News to discuss the theater's upcoming open house, her colorful background as a musician and Las Vegas club owner, her time in prison, and how she wound up in Yelm.
The open house of the Triad Theater is an opportunity for the community to come in and visit during daylight hours what is going on behind these doors. We're going to have like a plethora of all sorts of entertainment, refreshments, and mingling with a lot of the volunteers and the artists of the community that provide such great entertainment here in Yelm. The hours of the open house will be 5 o'clock to 7 o'clock on Tuesday, July 8th. We've put it early so that the business people can leave their businesses and then drop by, because it seems people are kind of uncomfortable to go to someplace new that they have never been to. And coming into this theater is pretty wacky anyway, because we come through the side doors, not the front doors. And so, you know, people are kind of like going, well, we see all these advertisements and everything, but we don't know what's going on in there. But when they come through the side door, kind of like a speakeasy back in the old days, they come in and immediately they know by the bright colors and all the energy in the front of the lobby. And then once you go into the black box of the theater, you become completely aware of what kind of an environment you're in. I started the theater about 3 years ago. We're going on our 3rd year. I was a performer in California years ago, probably in the 70s, and I was a composer and artist working with the David Ray Shepherd Band. That's who we were. I was also doing, had been asked to sing backup with the Poco Band, and I'd been on tour with the Cat Stevens Band, and I'd done many, many different things back during the Flower Child era. And then I was slipped some magic mushrooms in an experience that flipped me out and was very hard on me to have to perform in this kind of venue. And I realized the show had to go on, and whatever, I was able to pierce the veil of performing regardless of my condition, which was not very good. And it became very comedic, but it also really was powerful, because I realized that you have to totally be yourself, and you have to totally be real and vulnerable to the audience. And if you are, the audience then responds in kind. And so it completely changed my whole attitudes towards performing. Instead of just acting, it was truly coming from the heart and everything. So I did this, and I went to my first time in Las Vegas, just visiting it, and I saw what kind of stuff was going on in Vegas. And I remember looking up at the Aladdin Theater, big, huge billboard. You know, it was a marquee, and I went, I'm going to have my name up there in lights someday. And then I walked away from it, laughed, and then went back to San Diego performing. And within 3 months, some kind of manager came into this place where I was performing in San Diego and said, you belong in Vegas. And then the rest was history, because they carted my whole wacky band up to Vegas, and we completely broke the tradition of performing like lounge lizard bands, you know, where you're in your matchy-matchy suits. We kind of were more a parody and had an alternative twist, a kind of irreverent approach to it. But I was the queen of country outlaw music. And I had been kind of associated with David Allan Coe, who I also performed with the Dr. Hook Band, Jerry Jeff Walker. These all became, by the way, later in time, they performed at my club that I was able to have about 10 years later. I was so famous in Vegas because there was nothing like this kind of act. I would have to say I would be a nightmare at that period of time, it was like people couldn't believe that something like this would be on stage in Vegas. But I made sure I always had rhinestones on or something, but it was totally irreverent, and so it really went good. You could probably say I was a precursor to Cyndi Lauper back then. And so I was performing like that. And so when we did that, we performed to about 300 seating capacity, and it was 3 shows a night. We did this continually. They actually opened a casino for me later called the Rancho Hotel that became my home base for many years too. But during that time I played at the Desert Inn, the Caesar's Palace, the Aladdin Hotel, the Hacienda, every one of the big major hotels that coincidentally are all blown up now. They're, you know, gone, and they've become something else these days. Anyway, so at that time also I was performing at the Palomino in LA, and then I was going on tours. I toured Europe and was in Germany and Amsterdam, and then I was approached by RCA and Vine Street Records to, you know, become part of the scene in the Nashville environment. And so I was working at Pedernales Studios with Willie Nelson. I had done a ballad with him that was going on the album. They had just started releasing my songs, but it was turning to go more in the pop venue, which was okay, but you know, they started wanting to change my image. And they had done that with Lacey J. Dalton, and that pissed me off. So, and I thought that an artist should have the ability to, you know, express themselves visually as well as, you know, with their sound. And I started seeing, little by little, they were chipping away, telling me what to do and everything like that. And I had already had such a big following, I didn't understand why I couldn't just do what I was doing. And then, of course, they started with the, do you want to go the easy way and the quick way or the long way? And then it was referring to if you didn't cooperate by, you know, physically making yourself available to certain people, then you were going to have a little bit of a difficult time. That's what the industry is all about. I was not happy with the industry. And so I kind of became known as the Nashville Nightmare, because I didn't want to do that, and I walked away from that recording deal, and I walked away, and I decided I'd rather just play and have the freedom as an artist to play what I wanted to rather than what other people wanted me to do. So I went back to Vegas, and things were moving along. I got a club going in Vegas. It was a historic building, much like the one we're in today, and I completely converted it over. At one time was a speakeasy and an old casino, and it had been abandoned for probably 10 years, and I decided I wanted to take it back to what it was originally called the old Nashville, Nevada. And it was actually built by people like Merle Haggard, who lived in Las Vegas at the time as a little carpenter, and several other country stars. And the place had housed Patsy Cline back in the 50s. Elvis Presley used to go there hanging out. So to me, I really honor history in a community, and so that's why I wanted to bring back this old saloon. And so spent a lot of money that I had put into it. I also had a liquor license in California that I sold and took that money, invested that into this saloon and opera house. Had a gaming license as well, so I was very well established, we might say. And during that time, many people that I knew on the road and that I had met by being in Vegas for years, many of them were stars, like the Tommy Smothers Brothers gang would always come in. We had, I mean, Jack Tempchin, who wrote Peaceful Easy Feeling, a lot of writers, Warren Zevon, who wrote Werewolves of London. I mean, these people were just always coming and just partying at my club, much less the fact that they would come in and perform. I had like I said, Chris Christopherson was there. I had Jesus and Mary Jane. I had Nirvana coming in, who came in and played warm-up to the Sonic Youth Band. And actually, they only were paid $200. And the funny story with them is they got booed off the stage. And that was because they had never been exposed to the outside world yet. So a lot of things were going on there, but at the same time, musicians at that era of time were really wrapped up into it had moved from the pop market to, you know, the cocaine days. Now, my club was so outrageous that we never had any drugs on the premise, or we never promoted it, never encouraged it, anything like that. For the mere fact that I didn't ever want to jeopardize the club and the community of having live music there. And actually, for the most part, the people had respected that. But it's still, the whole town was a partying town. And I'm telling you the truth off camera, this is absolutely, well, it's on camera, it's okay, you guys are watching it, but keep it quiet, okay? But everybody was doing that in that era in the 80s. And so, even though I was like the club owner, I kind of knew that if anything ever happened, I would always be tested, because they could take my liquor license away and my gaming. They wanted me to testify. It was a federal case, and I was a very high-profile person in Vegas. I had judges and attorneys and everybody all came to party at this club too. And what happened is, all of a sudden the federal officers came in and wanted me to testify against somebody. And it happened to be one of the guitar players' uncles who had who performed often at the theater, and I didn't feel it was my right or my business to go and discuss what anybody does on my property or off of my property, for that matter, since no one was doing anything but drinking liquor on, you know, from my liquor license and everything. It was like, I'm not going to divulge or explain anything about people's private lives. So basically, I got in trouble for obstructing justice. They felt I was part of some big thing happening. And anyway, I ended up, after 3 years of them holding my club hostage, basically. It was called the RICO law, where they could arrest you without you being proven guilty or without your business being proven guilty. I owned the building too, and the real estate, but it was their way of hoping that I would go ahead and divulge information that I knew all about the community at that time, and I couldn't do that. So therefore, I just had to settle with taking a plea bargain at the end, just so that they took everything I owned, and they took also they closed down the club, they took the property, and under the RICO law, they were allowed to do that. This would not be allowed in this day and age right now. However, they could probably have held me longer with the new laws today, but they were able to take my property. And I had not done any crime. They had not caught me with any crime, nothing. All over the newspapers it was saying, how can Calamity Jayne be held guilty without even a trial? You know, she's being judged without anything. And so anyway, it was all part of the FBI's attempt to get me to turn over. And they were very honest, and I appreciated that. But that's what they told me why they were arresting me, because they felt if I cooperated, they would not make trouble. If I didn't cooperate, they could make trouble. And I was saying, well, I couldn't understand, since I didn't do any of the counts that they were indicting me for. How would they be able to say that? And they said, well, we know, and you know, you didn't do 8 of the 9 counts, but nobody else knows that. So the grand jury and the jury possibly might think you might know something about it. And if you might know something about it, that's called conspiracy. And conspiracy at this time is a 10-year mandatory sentence. So I couldn't risk having that 20-year mandatory sentence. And so that's where I took the plea bargain and went, okay, whatever it is, let's settle this, and you know, and that was it. But it wasn't done until after all of the other people went to trial, whatever they were doing, so that I never had to testify against anybody. And that was my whole reason that I was not cooperating, because I don't believe that was my position to have to do that. I believe everybody has the privacy for their own lives. So that happened, and anyway, so I go to 2 years. I get a choice to go to federal prison, or I could go to camp with Leona Helmsley, which, if you don't know who that is, Leona Helmsley at the time was much like Martha Stewart. And it's one of these poshy little camps where you get to play racquetball, and you get your fingernails manicured, and you get to wear your hair all up in curlers and everything. And I told my attorney, who was very famous in Vegas, that this wasn't for me. I don't think I could handle that kind of lifestyle for 2 years. That would be like prison to me, which he said, that is what prison is about. And I went, well, I would rather go and utilize my time to go to see something that I've never seen before, or learn what I've never seen before. How about let me go to where Squeaky Fromm is, and where the people who supposedly were trying to assassinate President, I think it was President Ford, and there was a lot of other famous female, like criminals. And I thought, since I had a social psychology major in college, that at least I would be growing and learning something. So I decided I would pick San Francisco, which was where Patty Hearst was also put in prison, and also Michael Milken at one time had been there when it was a co-ed prison. Well, this was now a mandatory prison, and it was mandatory medium maximum security. So I thought, well, that little detail doesn't matter. At least I'll get to meet all these famous people, and I can interview them, find out what was going on. And I got in, and it was like Goldie Hawn going into the boot camp. It was like, I was so freaked out at what I found in there, and I was calling my attorney immediately, going, I think I made a mistake. Can you get me out of here? Because it was so horrendous, and it was so abrasive, and all I could say is it was like they gave you one little blanket that was woolen, and it was scratchy, and this is like, even though I was a flower child, I was not used to this kind of environment. And it was just, grosera. That's how we would say it in Spanish. It was like just abrasive human beings in there, also with the most beautiful angelic people, and so it was really scary to me. But the attorney said, well, yes, he could get me out, but unfortunately it would take him exactly 18 months to do it, because once you get in, it takes that long to transfer you out, so you might as well do your time in there. So I had to settle in and deal with it. That experience was probably the most phenomenal experience of my life. It wasn't necessarily the best experience, but good and bad. I learned more in that world than I have learned in my whole entire life. And I have graduate work in university, and was like a 4.0 in my later years at university. So what I learned in prison was that everybody's sentence was not equal. Not meaning the time, because of course you had some people in their minimum maximum of 2 years. That was, and then there were some that were in there for 20 years and some that were in life. But I meant on a day-to-day level, it was not equal. You had a lot of foreign people from Vietnam, from Thailand, from the Philippines, that were little grandmas, little mamacitas from South America and Mexico, who innocently come over to go visit their grandchildren in the United States, and at the airport is approached by some gringo who says, can you do me a favor and take this doll or take this little package over, because I have the flu, I can't make it, my friend will be on the other side and will find you. And they were innocent enough to go, yes, I will, you know, okay, I will gladly do it. And then because the guilty party who has given them this package filled with contraband or drugs or whatever goes ahead and tips them $20. Now the person, I guarantee you, these people do not accept money from Americans. They loved Americans. And these people would go, these little women would go, no, 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 it's a gift. But the American would make sure that they took the money to kind of compensate for their guilt. This is what I looked at it. Because those women took that money after the pressure from the person telling them to take it, now when they go on the other side and they go through customs, and 9 out of 10 got busted, and their grandchildren and their children are looking at them like going, what are you doing? How come these guards are taking you away? They were put away for 20 years for this. And they are called mules. Now there are mules around, but let me tell you guys, and tell you, Steve, mules, it's a phony rap that's put on these people. For the most part, these people had no idea what they were bringing over, and they didn't. It wasn't a continual thing. They just came over one time, because when they got busted, they were in jail for 20 years. But there were enough of them continually coming over that there was always somebody new that they could, these drug dealers and would be bringing their stuff over. And it was like small-time petty drug dealers doing this, you know, the small little groups. So these little mamas never got to see their grandchildren free. They were put and convicted for 20 years to help justify the war on drugs. The war on drugs is not working, if you all haven't realized. War on drugs needs to be done through education. That's my own personal view. But we'll move on to the other side. What I learned, this is one of the things I learned. I became the school teacher for all of the international inmates in prison, because there was probably only a handful of us that had graduate work and you know, who were criminals, you know. So I was the English school teacher, and so I ended up, you know, I spoke a little Spanish, but then I just ended up having all of the inmates from all over the world had been busted and put in jail, and they needed to pass the test that said, what is that called in education? No one left behind, including inmates, including these little tiny Filipino ladies that had no idea what the hell was going on anyway. But I had to put 8 hours a day in, and as everybody else did in prison, to help create and keep the prison running. So I got a chance to know and understand what was going on with these individuals, and it was heartbreaking. Because they were so passive and gentle, these women were required to do 8 hours a day of work. But because they were gentle and also did a good job, when other girls that were from the city who were into crack and amphetamine and would play the race card game, like, you know, oh, don't come after me, or I'm gonna, you know, or I'm gonna sue you for discrimination or for you know, prejudice and everything. That was like heard constantly in this prison. The guards would never approach any of the city girls, but would only go after the very passive girls to make them do double shifts to clean up and take care of what was going on, while these other girls were lazy and sat back and never did any work because none of the guards wanted any problems with them. So in this way, some people who went to prison, it was actually an opportunity to have 3 beautiful meals a day. They could go walk up to anybody when anybody was watching the little TV. They could turn the channel to whatever they wanted. They were like treated like queens. Nobody got in their way. Nobody got in their face. And if you did as an inmate, you were like going to be liable for a big fight. Plus, you and that person would get time, you know, in like in solitary confinement and time, you'd get these bad marks and everything. So it wasn't, you know, worth it for anybody to engage in these battles, because as the guards would say, it takes 2 to get involved in any kind of argument. So basically those people kind of had a perfect environment while they were in prison, and that's why when they went out of prison they didn't have it so easy. So they'd end up finding themselves coming back to prison. Also, you had girls that would get emotionally involved with other girls, as we often tend to do. And these girls ended up, you know, being in jail for 10 years, maybe 15 years, no longer had family or anybody on the outside, and they became very close to the people inside. There was a lot of bisexuality, a lot of sex stuff going on in the prison, from the guards to the inmates. There was a lot of lesbian situations going on, as a lot of the girls needed to survive somehow and take care of their needs. But it was pretty rough for a lot of other people, because a lot of times it was not necessarily voluntary. Let me think. So you had people who were like just very abrasive people who got their way in prison because nobody got in their face. You had people who were sexually using themselves to get extra favors from the guards and things. That would happen a lot. You had a lot of inmates that learned to work the guards so that they got to be in certain cells with other girls that they wanted to be with, so at night that they could have their own experience. As I was saying, it wasn't equal. The sentencing wasn't equal for all, because usually there were 3 people to a cell, and the cell back in Ronald Reagan's days was supposed to be for only one person. It was the size was for a humane situation for rehabilitation, was, you know, about the size of here. It was a room for a little bed and one little locker and an open toilet. By the time I got there, they had 3 girls crammed into that one space, and they were allowed to lift that you know, the requirements because of the population explosion, because of the war on drugs. And so 3 were crammed into that. And what they found was that you could put 2 really rowdy, abusive women and 1 very passive woman in the same cell, and that one passive woman would end up getting all the harassment from the other 2, which would make it easier for the guards dealing with these people elsewhere. So that's what I'm referring to, that the little passive mama-sans and things that were in prison, they would be put in these situations where they couldn't defend themselves. And in the middle of the night, you've got the bunk beds, the 2 girls going at it, while these little Catholic mama-sans are like just trying to understand. They're in total hell. They don't even know what's, you know, what is all going on. And the 2 abrasive women were, you know, like always teasing them, going, "Come on, mama, come and join us." And all. It's terrible. It was just, that part was terrible. But for me, it was also golden, because the education I got was phenomenal, because what you're told on this side of the wall is different than what you're told on the other side. What happened is many public figures, many congressmen, many senators, many council people would show up to the prison to see what it was like behind this medium maximum female prison. They were not getting the true story. We all, as inmates, knew when any visitors were coming, because that's when they would put coffee in the coffee maker. That's when you would have salad in the salad bowl at your lunch dinner time. While I was there, the warden had been indicted for money laundering, and during the time I was there, he was released from that. So he was arrested, and the trial took place, and then he, you know, whatever happened, they dropped the case. While I was there, I knew that was going on, because my mind is going, well, isn't it interesting, as taxpayers, they're paying this amount of money for all of us inmates. All of us are working 8 hours a day, so we're providing, there's hardly any outside employment needed, but you also have guards, but they do have to pay the guards, and you have to pay the warden, but also that's been allotted in the finances. But wait a minute, you also get free food from expired milk products, and all the food is expired and contributed by supermarkets to the prison, and they're not using heat. What are they doing with the extra money? And then that's, you know, I get in trouble because I think too much like that. But anyway, I always ask questions. And so I realized that, yeah, what you see on the front line is not what you see if you're living there. When you're visiting also, they make sure everything is spick and span, everything is clean. So while you're walking through, it really looks like a barracks, just #1, like military barracks. But they have no idea really what was going on. The other thing was, yeah, all women did work 8 hours, which I think, you know, that's good. In a lot of male prisons, they don't have enough work for them, and this is really good to at least keep their mind off of things, and it's good because that's part of why we're in prison. We're supposed to be kind of paying back for maybe something that we did or whatever. But I feel that they missed the whole point in this, the penal system in this country. They had the opportunity to rehabilitate the women while they were there, merely by the fact putting public television, public broadcasting television, good TV on, but instead they had the most stupidest dumbing down sitcoms that had the fake laughter in it. They didn't allow certain textbooks to come in, but they allowed women to bring in detective and murder magazines or any kind of sex, you know, Penthouse, whatever else magazines in there. So that was really peculiar to me. Anyway, there was just a lot of interesting things there. The worst of it for me was the fact that they would do oral cavity searches to anybody when you wanted to go visit anybody during visiting hours. To me, I went, you're not going to do that to me. So I refused to have any visitors. Anybody showed up, I'd tell them to go home. But the people who came, these little mama-sans, mind you, that never did anything, having to go through such abrasiveness, they've never even gone to a doctor in, you know, probably in their life. And they're having to go through this because they might be smuggling drugs in and out during visitor hour. That had nothing to do with the fact that visitors would exchange any drugs back and forth. It was impossible to do that. The drugs were coming in from the guards. The guards don't have enough money to supplement their income, so that's how they make their little extra money. So in order to show the public, though, that they're trying to do their job, they do these ridiculous little rituals, which, you know, didn't accomplish anything except, you know, it's like just humiliating for any human being to have to go through this all the time. So that happened. So that's where, you know, I just never had any visitors, and it didn't bother me at all because it was by choice. And what I learned out of it is by choice, I can choose to make it be a solitary confinement monastery, you know, that I was in, or by choice I can think that, oh, I was a victim, and I refuse to think I'm a victim for something, you know. That's about it. I refuse to believe that I'm a victim. We get ourselves into these predicaments in life, and you really, when you look back at it, you start seeing how you kind of helped create this. I was known as an outlaw country singer, and when I got out of prison, I was really known as an outlaw country singer. And a matter of fact, that's how I really became famous in Vegas. Because I really was the first country rock woman to go to mandatory prison. You know, so Johnny Cash had nothing on me. I was in Las Vegas and had opened up another theater, much like this, called the Huntridge Theater. And oh my God, when I got out of prison, I mean, you know, whatever savings I would have, then I'd put it in another theater to let the music start happening again. And the roof fell in. It caved in. We almost died from it. I had the Circle Jerks sold-out show, and 15 minutes before we opened up the doors for the audience coming in, the kids with their tickets, the roof collapsed. So that wiped me out. So then I had a boutique, and then I opened up in the Boulder Dam Hotel the first cabaret underground club, and that I converted that and had an upstairs restaurant for the next few years. So I continued. I'm always in the business somehow, you know. And then while I was there, we saw the What the Bleep movie. And so What the Bleep, I was going, That's very interesting, hearing about all these quantum physicists and things like that, and that intrigued me about how your reality you can create your own reality. Now I know you're going, oh, it's one of them. I'm not one of anybody. I'm one of myself. So I don't belong to any group, any affiliation with anybody, but I get influenced by a lot of things in my life. And so I was influenced by that movie. And I thought the movie was a fabulous movie to introduce to people to quit losing their energy by being victims to things, but to say, what did I learn from this, and let's move on. And so that's what I did. And my sister was a school teacher she was in one of the private Annie's something school in Tacoma. It was a private school. And anyway, I came up here and found out that the people who did the movie were up here too. And anyway, so I thought, oh, that's great. I want to go see if there's any kind of, lectures on that. And I did go to that. And I thought it was a beautiful, inspiring 3-day workshop on it. But I also fell in love with the community. And the community, I mean, I'm from Vegas. There's desert there. I've never seen trees like this before. So I ended up buying a place here, a little ranch area with my sisters, and then I would go back and forth from Vegas because I also had a home in Baja, California. And I still do actually, and I go back and forth for a long time. But then I saw this theater building sitting here empty with a sign that said for rent, and it looked like it had like a bread line, or they were like just offering lunches or free meals for people who didn't have any food or who were indigent or something at the time. And I stop all the time at that stoplight, and something kept telling me, go check it out, go call, go check it out. And I had no idea that it was anything other than this white building that had these, paper advertisements in the front that come for free soup and bread or something. And then I all of a sudden saw the rent sign, and at the stop sign, I kept hearing a voice in my head, you have to stop and call up and ask what's going on. And so I went and met the landlord, and he informed me that the warehouse that this was, it was like all white in the inside and kind of not, it was kind of like just a storage place and everything. But he said at one time it had been a very makeshift playhouse for the community. And I was going, well, whatever happened? My God, this town, needs that. You got so many cool people in this community. Everybody's so talented, I hear. And so I went and saw a show that was while I visited my sister, I saw a show that was at Mr. Doug's, and it was with Claudia Simpson-Jones, who was like Olympic Chamber Orchestra woman. I go to another place, and it's Nancy doing a play. Nobody's doing the plays. This place was not, available then. So it was like just some brainstorming went on, and then it was like, it was so weird because I had moved a lot of my music equipment, a lot of stuff that I had, and I went, it's in storage here. I should go ahead and start putting it here and make this a theater. And so that's where I was just like, got on my hands and knees and started painting everything black in this room. Black, 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 black. And then I found the old red caboose. There was some little restaurant right on Yelm Avenue, and they were put some little seats outside that they said, take these away for free. And so I grabbed them and sawed them in half so that I could at least have some lounge. And that's these ones that we're sitting on. Yeah, and so, everything I had, all my money was paying for the rent and getting the utilities, getting everything set up. And then I'd have to buy the paints and then repair this. And then I needed a sound thing, and I needed more chairs. And we would, lighting, got to get this. Got teamed up with Bob from, and Claudia Simpson-Jones. They helped bring in stuff for me. And we ended up coming up with this shell that started getting a good vibe, and that's what was missing. There was no vibe in here before, and now it has a vibe. You can't come off of the street and come to see a show, unless you're introduced. You got to go first the intro, and then you go into seeing the actual show. So coming into this lobby kind of like blows your mind. It just kind of like makes you like, it makes you forget whatever else you're seeing, if not because of the bright colors and everything. It just, it's definitely not a feng shui environment. It's definitely one to shake your senses up. And then you walk inside and you sit down and you will see the most incredible shows you have ever seen. These shows I would show in Vegas anytime, and we would have packed houses for this. You're getting them at such cheap prices. I try even getting these films for you at $5 so that people can afford it here. Films that are classics or things that are on the internet, things they don't see. You know, we have to at least pay for the electric bills and stuff like that, but you know, the plays that we have, they're incredible. These things on Broadway or in Vegas, they outshine them. The things that, you know, the bands that are performing here by the teens are like in my time when Jim Morrison of the Doors were performing at the Troubadour, when I was at the Palomino Club and things like that. These kids are awesome. They're, you know, the lecturers that we have here, they've got more accolades and, you know, PhDs, LLCs. There's so many, they've got a whole list of letters after their names because they are so brilliant, and they're giving lectures continually here at the theaters. I've had people from coast to coast, like Michael Tellinger, James Gilliland, Andrew Bashago, to name a few. I've had people like Sandra Romero and many of the local community leaders that come in to do town halls here to help, you know, bring about awareness to really hot topics that are happening at the time. We have the most spectacular poets in the community. The poets, my God, if you just hang out long enough, you're going to know these people are going to be part of the history of our literature in America, because they are phenomenal. They are the best. And I'm not saying it just because I'm from Yelm. I'm saying it because I'm from the entertainment capital of the world, and I've seen it all, and I've been part of it. And these are the best. I'm from the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Las Vegas. I'm even good at what I do. I'm saying these people outshine any people I've seen. They're brilliant. So I also would say the Olympic Chamber Orchestra, phenomenal. Where were you guys for the Messiah when we had the Messiah here, in December? It was great. Also had things like, we have like a lecturer that comes in and shows alternative news. It's like watching CNN Live, except he's giving alternative news, things that you don't see on mainstream media. And that's on Tuesdays, twice a month. And that's Scott Mowry. Mihal comes in here, who's phenomenal, from Ireland, who speaks and lectures. The list goes on and on. We're very fortunate to have all these people here in Yelm. And I hope you all do come down to experience the theater on our open house. It's free. You're going to get refreshments, you get to mingle, and you're going to see a little sample of some of the things that we've had here.